Do you remember the first time you noticed that you were alive? Probably not. Do babies notice that they are alive? They certainly seem to notice their toes and their toys. But do they notice that they are alive, or do they just take it for granted? What do you think? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? What do you think? Why do people even think about these questions or think about the other mysteries in the world? Why is it that we think our way through life? What's going on? What is this thing called life anyway? We live in life, but are we really part of life? Do we matter to life? What is our relationship with this thing called life? Hi, I'm Reverend Kate from the Center for Spiritual Living in Carlsbad, California, and today's talk is the first in our annual 4-week series on understanding life from a spiritual standpoint. So, what is it anyway? What's going on here, there, and everywhere? What is this thing itself? So let's start with the question, why do we even ask? Why do we even wonder? Why do we notice life? Why aren't we still like the rocks, quiet like the plants, or seemingly content with our existence like the animals? Doesn't it seem true that people are always looking for answers, always asking, what for and why? What's it all about? It just seems to be our inherent nature. From a baby noticing its toes for the first time to an adult trying to figure out what is going on around them. We humans are forever thinking, reasoning, discovering, and asking, what, why, how? Why is it, for instance, that all around us we see abundance, from the grains of sand on the beach to every little shoot of grass growing in the sun? And yet, as Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, points out on the very first page of his book, The Science of Mind, we humans continually ask ourselves, if the world is so abundant, then why is mankind weak, poor, and afraid? In our classes at our center, the question has come up over and over again. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, the study of the science of mind is really a study of first cause, of spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, that ultimate something from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. Now, I'm sure that you really feel comfortable with the idea that there are certain physical laws, invisible principles that we use in everyday life. Oh, gravity keeps us on our feet. We don't float up into outer space. And gravity works the same for everyone, everywhere. So we call it a law or a principle. If you mix red and yellow paint together, you get orange and I get orange. So we can rely on the invisible principle behind these natural laws without any doubt, right? When Samuel adds 2 plus 3, he gets 5, and so does Samuel's cousin. These principles are universal to us all. They are invisible, but we trust them. And it's the same with metaphysical principles. They need to work for everyone everywhere, or they are not really laws or principles. The universe, the thing itself, never plays favorites. This means it doesn't matter if you're not Jesus or Buddha. It doesn't matter if you haven't spent years studying metaphysics. You can still use metaphysical principles. Just like you don't have to wait until you have learned as much as a professional mathematician to be able to add up 2 plus 3 and get 5. But you do need to learn basic addition. It's not that hard. Same thing with the science of mind. You don't have to know everything about it to begin to use it. Every journey begins with a first step. There is nothing supernatural about this study of life. You probably already know someone who has told you that they recovered from a physical illness more quickly because of prayer, right? You may have even wondered why prayer seems to work for some people but not others. And how do prayers work anyway? When I was young, I had the idea that maybe God was like a Santa Claus up in the sky, making a list, picking and choosing who was going to get what, which prayers to answer and which to ignore. Or maybe God was like a puppeteer and we were all its puppets. But I didn't really think about it too much myself. They were just passing thoughts for me, fanciful thoughts. But I do have many friends who were taught that God was some kind of an otherworldly being who was always judging them and favored some people more than others. So what were you taught? Now, as an adult, when we look around the natural world, it really seems that things in nature are living by the same rules everywhere. Forests grow where there is enough moisture, and deserts bloom in the arid sun, no matter which continent you live on. So why would God's laws be so fair to the rest of nature, but unfair to humanity? Does it make sense? Does it seem true that one person's prayers would be answered, but not someone else's? So we say, no, that cannot be the case. That would go against the principles in operation in the universe. No, it's not the case that one person's prayers or thoughts are favored above another's. All prayers, all thoughts are responded to equally. But here's the thing. A prayer is actually something that happens within us. That's why Jesus said, "It is done to you as you believe." In our teaching, we describe prayer as a movement of thought within the mind of the one praying for a specific purpose. We can learn to meditate and pray with greater skill, just like a child can learn to read and write with greater skill. Our affirmative prayers are real, even though they are invisible. All our thoughts and prayers take place in our mind. So, what is mind? Ernest Holmes said that mind is consciousness. Mind isn't a thing located in our body, although we need a body to use it. It isn't located in our brain, although we need a brain to live in this world. But this material world isn't the thing itself. It's what you could call a manifestation of spirit, made of spirit itself, but spirit is infinite mind. It's not limited like our world. So Then, if we live in a spiritual universe, if everything is spirit or mind, but spirit or mind is more than everything, well, how can we figure all this out and try to understand it? So now, I'm sure you've heard the idea before that you have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And that is actually a great way of visualizing what's going on with our individual lives. And it helps a bit in trying to understand the greater thing itself, the infinite mind also. But the truth is, conscious, unconscious, there are not two minds. There are only two names. The idea of conscious mind versus unconscious mind, or objective mind versus subjective mind, is just referring to different states of consciousness. In the same way that water and ice refer to different states of H2O. I wouldn't be too far off to say that your personal conscious mind is like an iceberg floating in an infinite sea of water that it is part of and that it came out of. Although I guess the problem with that image is that we humans have choices and we have volition, and an iceberg is just drifting along. So maybe you can think about it later and come up with your own better example. But anyway, we do have this individualized conscious mind. Your thoughts are not the same as mine. You might be able to convince me to think the same way about something as you do, but I have an ultimate choice of my own whether to or not. Yet, although my conscious mind is mine, my unconscious mind, going back to the iceberg analogy, is not so separate. It's kind of like the water around the iceberg, influenced by the iceberg and influencing the iceberg, but really not distinct from the rest of that infinite sea. And it's because of this that we can say that there is limitless power at man's disposal. Ernest Holmes described it saying, quote, "Each individual maintains their identity through their personal use of the one mind, one law of the universe. Each person is drawing from life what he or she thinks into it. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. We all use the creative power of the universal mind every time we use our own mind." End of quote. See, there's only one thing, the thing itself. We call it mind or spirit. And since there's only one thing, we're made of it, so we must have some of the characteristics of it, although we're not it any more than a drop of water is the whole ocean. It has some of the characteristics, but it's not the whole thing. So each of us is drawing from life what he or she thinks into it. What does this mean? It may even seem unbelievable, but haven't you experienced, at least now and then, that when you expected something to happen, it did? How often have you just thought of a person and a second later, the phone rings and it's them? Or have you ever just woken up and had a feeling that you would have a great day at work, and you did? Or have you ever been just sure that whatever you were cooking was going to be delicious, and it was? Or, on the other hand, Did you ever just have the idea that something you were eating was going to make you sick, even before you took a bite of it? And it did. The fact is, all thought is creative, whether it's positive or negative. The good news is that we can learn to use our conscious thought in a way to get our unconscious mind to be in harmony with our conscious mind. So for an example, I wanted to become a minister because I felt so grateful for this teaching. I wanted to share it. That was my conscious decision. And let's call that conscious thought positive. But then I had a lot of doubts about whether I'd be very good at it. My work background had been in agriculture and construction and real estate, and I had really only worked with rather small teams of people in the past, and I have a pretty quiet disposition, and I'm fairly reserved. And plus, I felt some anxiety I would never live up to my mother's example. She was the founder of our center. And these thoughts existed, but for me, they pretty much existed on what you could call an unconscious level. So let's call these unconscious thoughts negative. Although I don't want to give you the impression that all unconscious thoughts are negative. Not true. But in this case, they were negative. Sometimes unconscious thoughts are just random or a matter of habits. So in my particular case, what happened was it ended up taking me extra time to become a minister. I started and stopped my ministerial studies in the 1990s, but I didn't finally actually become a minister until a couple of decades later, when I was able to use my conscious mind to overcome my self-doubt through specific spiritual practices, including specific affirmative prayer treatment. My prayers were answered as my conscious thought created the possibility of becoming a minister, whereas 20 years earlier, my unconscious fears had blocked my own good and created the impossibility of becoming a minister. See, the road to freedom is not mysterious. Holmes says that we have a conscious mind that operates within this unconscious field, which is creative. The conscious mind is spirit in action. It operates in freedom. And the subconscious or subjective unconscious mind is law, or the principles about how it all works, like gravity. You could think of the unconscious as being the servant of the conscious. But the thing is, without training, without consciously making decisions and setting an intention, pretty much any old thing happens. And life can seem random, even a bit nonsensical at times. Bad things do happen to good people in the same way that an untrained dog might or might not bite a stranger. And our experience is really that stuff happens so much that life does often seem random. But it doesn't have to be, at least not all the time. Learning to trust will make us happy, okay? We can't control everything. I'm not the only person on earth. I can't decide everything that's happening everywhere for everyone. I can't pray for the sun to rise in the west and set in the east. But we can still trust the truth that there is a power for good greater than we are, that we can use well and wisely if we so choose. On page 33 of The Science of Mind, Holmes wrote, "When we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. We must learn to come under that divine government and accept the fact that nature's table is always filled. Never was there a cosmic famine." He quotes Thomas Troward saying, "The finite or everyday life has wrought and suffered, but the infinite lies in smiling repose." He explains that God is always God. No matter what our emotional storm may be, or what our objective or apparent situation may be, there is always something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. Something perfect, a perfect essence. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings, that thing itself, that spirit yearning to be in expression through us, as us, for us, and with us. Divine nature is in every person, and you are the child of Spirit itself, born from and connected to the thing itself, universal wholeness. So, begin right now to expect the best. It is your birthright. It's your God-given ability. We live in spirit and spirit lives in us, and it's time to recognize that we are truly the children of spirit, and we are loved. You are the beloved. You deserve a wonderful life. This is the truth. In studying the science of mind, we are studying how to get our lives more in harmony, more in connection with the thing itself. So we just keep working on it. Please take the first step right now, today, and accept more and more good. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Stay tuned. And if you have any questions, you can contact us through our website. Blessings to you.